Welcome back to The Lead. Sticking with politics now, President Donald Trump insisting his controversial travel ban is keeping America safe because there are, quote, a lot of bad dudes out there, end quote. Lots to discuss with my panel. Thanks one and all for being here. David French, let me start with you. You think the executive actions were reasonable, though poorly implemented, and that the media and others are being hysterical. Explain.
Well, by and large, reasonable. I mean, what we're looking at the bottom line is a 3-month delay in processing entries from 7 countries that the Obama administration had identified as particularly problematic, a 4-month pause in refugee admissions, then returning those numbers to roughly slightly more than the average Bush-era admission levels, and then providing some privileges to members of religious minorities in the refugee resettlement process. All of that is not all that radical, and in fact, given the rise in the number of Islamic terrorist plots and the problems that we've seen in Europe, pushing the pause button for a little while makes a lot of sense. What did not make sense was applying this to green card holders, applying this to translators and interpreters who'd sacrificed with Americans overseas, and applying it to people who are already in transit, who had already jumped through all the lawful hoops. And that's why you had all of this chaos over the weekend, which in my view was inexcusable. That was poorly planned and caused a shock to the political system that didn't need to happen.
Ruth, so let's posit that it was poorly planned, because it seems like the three of you agree on that probably. But what about the executive order unto itself?
With David on the chaos, so agreed on that. But he left out a bunch of things. For example, no more Syrian refugees. Okay, we can have an argument about whether the United States could have done something, but the notion that we as a country don't have a moral responsibility like other countries to take in people and who have been extensively vetted is just repugnant to me. And the broader issue is that nobody wants to risk letting people into this country who could be terrorists, but there is just no fit between this order, no fit that I can see or that experts really see between this order and protecting us. You look at the 9/11 terrorists, these are not the countries that they came from.
No, I came from Saudi, Egypt, UAE, and Lebanon, I think. So the 4 of them not mentioned at all. And then there's also, of course, a lot of debate about whether or not this is a quote-unquote Muslim ban. Obviously, it's not as extensive as what President Trump promised during the campaign. But take a listen to former New York City Mayor and Trump advisor Rudy Giuliani talking about what this ban is yesterday.
When he first announced it, he said Muslim ban. He called me up. He said, put a commission together, show me the right way to do it legally. And what we did was we focused on, instead of religion, danger. The areas of the world that create danger for us, which is a factual basis, not a religious basis.
Margaret, a lot of people heard Mayor Giuliani saying that and interpreted it differently than Mayor Giuliani apparently did, which is, I want to do a Muslim ban, find out a legal way to do it.
There are also a lot of American voters, maybe not a majority, but a sizable pocket who want a Muslim ban and were tweeting over the weekend or expressing on Facebook their support for #Muslim ban.
David Duke, Michael Flynn's son, Michael Jr., yeah.
Formerly tweeting. So, look, the question, there are obviously the constituencies that Ruth mentioned, whether you're talking about refugees, whether you're talking about green card holders, whether you're talking about people facing religious persecution, but there are the political constituencies too. And this is actually a really important test early on for the Trump administration. And those constituencies are everything from his cabinet, like, Mattis, Kelly, I mean, these principal advisors to President Trump, to lawmakers, particularly Republicans in Congress, to leaders of other countries, important allies and partners of us, whether it's Angela Merkel, whether it's King Abdullah from Jordan, who is here today to visit the vice president, and Mike Pence's readout and the Jordanians' readout looked awfully different.
So, David, the 7 countries that you correctly point out were identified by the Obama administration's Department of Homeland Security. That was for, I think, for ending the visa waiver program and for making it tougher for people to get in from those countries. But it wasn't a ban on immigrants. So Congressman Schiff, who was on earlier today, said that that's something of a red herring because, yes, they identified them as countries of concern, but they didn't say nobody can come in.
Well, right. It's obviously a change in policy. It's a 90-day change in policy is what we know for right now, which is not that long a time. And plus, if you look at the actual 7 countries, I've heard a lot of talk about Saudi Arabia and Egypt, and we need to take a close look, especially at Saudi Arabia. But this list is based on conditions now. Yemen is deteriorating. It's in horrific condition. There was an American combat death in Yemen. Syria, we know the problems with Syria, even though Iraq is our ally, and I think the inclusion on that list is problematic. Let's not forget that the largest jihadist-held city in the world is Mosul, Iraq. In Iraq, and Iraq has been racked with jihadist violence. Iran is our enemy. Somalia is racked with jihadist violence. This is based on present conditions and present dangers. I think it's a reasonable list. And again, when we use the term ban, that sounds permanent. This is 90 days while there's a reevaluation. That's 3 months. That's not a long time. Now let's see what happens at the end of those 90 days. Let's see what the policy is at the end of those 90 days. But for right now, highlighting these 7 countries, which the Obama administration had already pointed out as being particularly dangerous, seems reasonable. It might be over-inclusive, it might be under-inclusive, but these 7 are certainly a defensible choice.
The only thing I'll say is 90 days might not be long for the 4 of us, but it might be long for some people out there trying to get to the United States. I'm sure you would concede that point.
Particularly for translators and interpreters and people who've done good service for American forces overseas. For those people, I think there should be immediate relief for them. And I think that's one of the most distressing parts of the implementation was we had a situation where some of these people seemed to be left out in the cold, and that's inexcusable.
David, Margaret, Ruth, thanks so much. I'm sorry, that's all the time we have.